Hello and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Marte, I come from Norway and I love makeup, and today I am going to be talking about the Undergrowth and the Nudetrals palettes from Cosmic Brushes, or Cosmic Beauty I think they renamed into. I really wanted to show you the inside too before we get going, so that you can see just how beautiful these color stories are. They're very much perfect for the season because it's fall right now, and these tones are just so amazing, and the palettes are also very cheap, so I figured I would have to try them. I already do have the Serenity palette from the same brand and I really like the formulas there. So since these palettes are so up my alley, I just really wanted to try them. So in this video I'm actually doing 2 looks with each palette, and then I did this look that I'm wearing right here with both palettes. So if you're interested in seeing some swatches and seeing the looks that I created, keep watching. Here you can see the palette a little bit more close up. I feel like it's a very colorful green palette, to be honest. And there are a few shimmers that are really speaking to me here. But the shimmers are also relatively dark. But I think I can do a lot of different looks with this palette, so I'm excited to be using it. Here is the Nudetrals palette closer up, and you can see that this is a very stunning palette. When I'm looking at it to use it, I'm like, what am I even gonna do? Because there are so many things I feel like I could do, and I'm especially drawn to these shades right here from the mattes, and I feel like all of the shimmers are quite interesting in comparison to the Undergrowth palette. I don't necessarily feel drawn to all of the shimmers, but these are looking really, really nice. Since I'll be going to work for basically all of the looks that I'm making, I'm gonna try to not make something way too, I don't know, too dark or intense, but I think my today's look is going to be a little bit dark because I want to use Undergrowth, and I feel like it goes really well with this shade, and I'll just see which mattes I will use for the blending. Maybe this one, maybe this one, we'll just see, but I'm gonna start with this matte right here. Now with that shade Nettle, I'm going to use my Cosmic Brushes number 3 brush. It's a relatively detailed brush and it's a little bit pointed, so I think it's perfect for the crease. And this shadow is applying very pigmented. And it looks like it's blending extremely well too. And it's not necessarily as dark as I thought it was going to be. And do ignore my redness here, it's just something I've reacted to. So here we have Nettle on both eyes, and I feel like it's applying really beautifully, but then it's like, I don't know, it's just turning a bit while it's on my eye. But it might be my primer, because I used my Wet n Wild primer today. So maybe that's the issue. I will use something else tomorrow, but it's not looking that bad. But I'm feeling like going into this shade Murky because it's a little bit more on the brown side compared to Nettle. So I'm just taking that same brush and I'm going to apply that towards the inner corner because I want to use a lot of that deep shimmer, so then I can have a deep matte underneath anyway. And this tone is really nice. I love green dingy browns like this. I'm going to take this really bright acid green. It's called Marsh, and I'm going to use that same brush actually. And I'll just apply that towards the inner, very inner part of the crease. It's just going to add some pop of more bright color to this look, which I think will be nice. And you can see I'm dragging it a bit upwards towards that other shade that I used, just to kind of blend it together and give it a bit more color. And I know I said I'm going to work and I didn't want it to be too dramatic, but I mean, no one's going to really react on it anyway, but I just really love these colors. Now I'm taking that lightest yellow shade from the palette called Reeds, and I'm going to apply that as a transition shade. I should have probably used something a little bit more precise than this brush. It's CB1, so Cosmic Brushes 1. But I suppose it's fine. I mean, I love an opaque matte because it's just gonna help the blend look even more seamless. Yeah, I'm really liking how this is looking. Now for the lower lash line, I'm going to use this shade called Roots, and I'm taking that same brush, CB3, and I'm just going to apply that right under here. And it's basically just because I feel like I'm wearing very colorful greens, so I want to ground it to make it a little bit more on the neutral side again. Not that this look is going to be neutral, but wow, I think these shadows are just looking so nicely blended. I'm very impressed by the quality of these mattes. And just before I go in with the shimmer, I'm just going back into that deepest shade to make sure I have the best blend I could, which I didn't need a lot. Although I see on this side it's looking a lot more patchy, so I don't know what's the deal with that. So I'm just gonna pack it on right where it looks patchy and hope for the best. Either way, most of it is going to be covered up by a shimmer. Now for shimmer, I was thinking to use this one, but I feel like this shade Buggy, it is kind of like the same shade but just a little bit less blue or cool toned. It's a little bit warmer and maybe a tad lighter. So I think I'll use that and combine it with a little bit of the shade Fungi. So I'm just gonna take this on my finger. Oh, that's feeling very thick. Yeah, it is very pigmented, but it doesn't feel squishy or anything, so that's promising. And I'll just apply that towards the middle, I think, from the outer parts towards the middle. And then I'm going to use Fungi on the inner parts. I feel like this palette is kind of lacking a light shimmer because the lightest ones are Vegetation. Wait, I can show you. The only lighter shades are Vegetation right here, which is very cool. And then this one, it's more of like a golden, and it's not necessarily that bright and light, as you can see when I shift it. And then we have, I mean, these are just medium toned. I feel like all of them are nearly medium toned. Maybe these could be considered light, but I'm kind of missing something lighter. But I've got to say, this shimmer is looking amazing. It's so pretty. It's applying really well too. So now I'm just taking Fungi on a different finger. This is more of like a golden shade, but it's a little bit more on the muted side. I feel like that shade is not as sparkly, maybe. Maybe I should have used the shade Wilderness instead. But it's still pretty, don't get me wrong. It's just I was hoping for a little bit more of a sparkly shade. Here is the finished look, the first look I created. I really like the result. I just feel like one of the shimmers could have been a little bit more sparkly, but you know, that's just because I'm used to indie makeup, and the price of this palette is really cheap, so no wonder that all the shimmers can't be special. But the deeper shade is really beautiful and the mattes applied so nicely, so all in all I really enjoy this look and I'm excited to play more with this palette. So let me get on to the next look. Now for the next look, I think I'll go both orange, maybe some of these, and some greens. I'm thinking something a little bit lighter. Maybe I'll actually go in with this one in the outer crease and blend it with this. Maybe a tiny bit of the lightest kind of greenish yellow shade here. And then I'll use this for the inner corner, or not the inner corner, but the inner crease, and blend it with this as well. So I'll start out with this one, and that is the shade Sludge, and I'm using my Cosmic Brushes 3 brush. I feel like these shades are just applying so easily, like yesterday too, they just look blended almost immediately. Now I'm taking the top shade of the palette called Fern, and I'm just applying that here next to the orange that I just laid down, or the orange brown. It's a little bit more of a warm orangey brown shade. By the way, I did use this one a little bit for the lower lash line, but now I'm going to use this shade called Clay, and I'm going to use my 022 brush from Glam shop. And then I think I'm actually going to go into this one, which is Marsh. So those will kind of be my two transition shades, and then I'll transition those with this one as well. So this shade I'm just gonna apply a little bit further down than you might think, just because I really want that bright orange to pop. And you can see that I'm also just brushing it a little bit underneath here. As I said, I'm now taking Marsh. It's the same that I used in my look yesterday. I just love the tone of it, and I just think it's a really nice shade. Then, as I said, I'm gonna take that super light yellowy green shade. It's called Reeds, and I'll just brush that all over the crease here, just to make sure everything is tied together and blend it out nicely. I felt like it really helped the blend look flawless yesterday. And I'll just go in with the shade Clay again, because always if you use something to blend it out, you're gonna lose a little bit of the vibrancy, so I just want to make sure that I have that back. And for the lower lash line, I'm just gonna use, what am I gonna use? I think actually I'm just going to take the same shade I used yesterday called Roots. It's the neutral shade of the palette, just to kind of tie the look a little bit more together, because again I'm going to work with this look. As I haven't done any swatches yet, I just realized that this shade is so amazing. It's called Fireflies and it's so electric, and it's like a duochrome, so I'm totally using that today, because I was kind of thinking I'd use this one, which is more of a golden shade, or this one, which is also like a duochrome, but it looks a little bit lighter. But wow, this one looks so insane. It is so stunning. Just look at that bluish green shift that it has. Oh, and also update on yesterday's look. I had no creasing during the day, and I removed my makeup around, maybe it was 10 p.m. and I put my makeup on in the morning. I was starting to film like at 6 a.m. so that just proves that it lasted a very long time, more than 12 hours, and I love how this is looking. I feel like maybe I would get more intensity or sparkles with the shade if I had used a glitter glue, but it's still looking really pretty. Wow, this is maybe my favorite shade of the palette. But I also love the shimmer that I used yesterday, the dark one called Boggy. I think that one was really pretty too. Now this is the finished look, and I love how it turned out. I think the shimmer is just so pretty. I think you can just see how electric it is. It's very shifty and shiny. I wish it was a tiny bit more sparkly, because I just love when they're super intense, but I think glitter glue would fix that. But I mean, it's already very shiny and beautiful, and the mattes are just amazing, so no complaints there. So yeah, that is the second look with the Undergrowth palette. For this look today, I'm going to do something very simple. I think I'm going to do these two and then use the iridescent multichrome here because I don't really have that much time. So as I said, I'm taking that shade Gentle, it's the green one, and I'm using my CB2 brush, which is the Cosmic Brushes brush, or do you call them Cosmic Beauty now? Their website is still Cosmic Brushes though. But I'm just gonna apply this in the outer corner and towards the middle, and then I'm gonna take that gorgeous golden yellowy orange shade and I'll be applying that one for the inner parts. But I'm just using my Cosmic Brushes 2 brush for that yellowy shade, and this is like one of my favorite kinds of colors. I think I always talk about these shades. They're almost orange but very warm and just like a sunflower kind of shade. I think it's pulling a little bit more orange or deeper actually when I'm applying it now, but I don't mind, I still love it. And in addition to these two shades that I've applied now, I'm going to use that lightest shade called Cheek. It's a little bit more on the pink side here, but it's very light. But before I do that, I'm just gonna make sure I have enough of that green. And I love these colors together. They're like, again, sunflower colors, which I feel like I mention in almost all my videos where I do green and orangey yellow tones, but I'm just so obsessed with those kind of colors. So I'm now taking that light shade on my Cosmic Brushes brush number 1, and I'm basically just using it to mattify the primer and the concealer that I've applied, because I always apply concealer on the inner parts and outer parts of my eye unless I forget it. Again, this one seems like it's pigmented, so it's really helping blending, but I want to go in with the colors just so that I have them a bit stronger, just like that really. So I'm just gonna do the same with my other eye, and then I'll go in with the shimmer that's called Radiant. Just before I'm going in with the shimmer, I'm taking the shade in between the yellow and green called Tease. So it's kind of like a middle thing, to be honest. It fits perfectly where it is in the palette because it's like a warmer green, but it's a neutral kind of shade. So it's nearly like a beige. But how perfect does that go with those shades? I'm also just blowing it out a little bit here in the outer corner. And now I'm just gonna take the shade Radiant. Oh, I mean, you know how much I love these kind of shades. It's like the one in my collab palette Serpent. It looks like Transformation in my palette, and I'm just so obsessed with that kind of shift. I feel like it just makes your look so spectacular. And this one looks so much like my own collab shade, so of course I love it. And there we have it. So nice. I love this kind of look. It's very simple, but still just enough color and sparkly and shifty. Now this is the first look with the Neutrals palette, and I love it so much. If you have seen my Serpent palette, you can probably tell that I do have some very similar colors to the mattes as well as the shimmer in that palette, so I could have made a very similar look with my own collab palette, but I guess that's why I was going towards these shades, because I just think they're so pretty, and that shimmer is very reflective, and I think it's a little bit less white in the base than my shade in my collab palette, so there is a difference for sure. And yeah, I'm very pleased with this look. I think it turned out really pretty and soft, yet a little bit colorful and very fall-like, so I really enjoyed that. And I also used this new Romand, what is it called? It is a Glossing water tint and it's in the shade Nudie Sundown, and I think it's just a very neutral, beautiful shade. It did get deeper when I applied a little bit more, so this is how it looks with 2 layers. And then I'm using my Unleashia foundation, which is why I'm so glowy. I might matte it down a little bit, but my skin has been feeling very dry, so it's nice to have something very moisturizing for the skin. But let me do the second look with this palette. For my second look with this Nudetrals palette, I want to use this berry shade here, and I feel like I'm going to use some of these shades, at least like this one, maybe this for the inner corner again. And or maybe I should actually mix it up, take this one for the inner corner and this one for the lower lash line. And I'm contemplating on using this one, Desire, because it looks so pretty, but it's a little bit dark, so maybe I'll use this one too. Maybe I'll go ahead and use this one, I'll just have to see, but I'm gonna start out with this berry shade. The brush I'm using is the CB3 brush, which I've been using for the other looks too. I'm really liking this brush set. So if you get it like on sale, or even if it's just available again, and you need more brushes, then know that those are very good. I feel like I just want the berry shade here in the outer corner, so I'm not going to drag it any further towards the middle. I think I'll just do the green there actually. Now I'm going to take this green shade, and I'm using my Cosmic Brushes number 2 brush, and I'm going to apply this here towards the inner corner. And then I'm going to take my Cosmic Brushes number 1 brush, and I'm going to take this shade, and I'll use a little bit of this lightest one to blend out the deeper shades. And that first one that I showed you, I'm only going to use with the purple here because it's a little bit more on the pink side. Ooh, and that's really helping the blend. Though I wish it was a little less beige and a little bit more purple because I really like that berry shade, but it's fine. So now I'm taking that shade that is called Chic, which is the lightest one, and I'm just using that to blend the green here. Now I'm taking the yellow shade Icon, and I'm going to apply that here, and I'm blending it a bit into the berry shade and towards the inner corner, but I don't think I want full intensity towards the inner corner, just a little bit of it. And I see that I have to use the transitioning shades here as well, so I'm going to take another one of that same brush that I just used. It's the 0122 brush from Glam Shop, and I'm going to take the same transition shade that I used for the upper parts here, and I'm going to use that here. And I think I'll just go back in with the berry shade just a little bit to make sure I have the color a little bit more intense, because these transition shades are just making them a little bit more neutral. Now for the shimmers, I will use a tiny bit of this just in the outer corner of the lid, and then I'm going to use this beautiful green duochrome because I think it just fits the colors so well. So I'm going to start out with this one. I'm just going to take a little bit on my finger, and wow, that is so foiled and beautiful. And I already took a little bit of that green duochrome too on the other finger, and I'm going to use this red toned color just where I have the berry matte, because I feel like this is a little bit more of a deeper based multichrome, so it's better to have it where you have deep mattes, just like that. And then I'm going to take this beautiful green duochrome, and that is looking really nice. So I think I'll use a little bit of either radiant or that lightest matte for the inner corner. Maybe I'll actually just go for the matte, and I'll show you the close-up of the look. Now here is the final look for the Neutrals palette, and I really enjoy this. These colors are so nice and they all applied really nicely, and I like the shimmer so much. And yeah, I'm just super happy with it. It's a very fall vibes look. I just really enjoy it so much, and I think I'll film another look actually with both of the palettes. So I suppose that will be the next thing that you see. For the last look I'm going to create, I'm going to use both palettes as I said previously, but I'm going to just start with this brown called Delicate in the outer corner because I don't really know what to do. I think I definitely want to use this one again, and I think I want to mix in maybe this and maybe some of the greens from the Undergrowth palette. So I'm just applying it in the outer corner right here, not blowing it out too much, but mostly just using it as a deepening shade. I think I'll now just go in with the shade, what is it called? The Marsh. I just love the tone of that. I feel like I've used it in all the looks I've done with this palette, but it's just such a pretty green. Oh, but first I actually do want to use this one, the shade Murky, first, and then I'll use that one. So I'll just save that brush because I already applied it on the brush. So now I'm taking the 022 brush instead, just because I do want something that is deeper to be in the crease, and then I can use the shade Marsh to blend it out towards the brow bone. Before going in with transition shades, I'm just going to use this shade Lust, and that shade is from the Nudetrals palette, and I'm going to use that shade here towards the inner corner, and I'm gonna have to blend it out a little bit because I don't want it to be like deeper than, oh, you know, that could actually have been really nice if I did a halo eye, but I think I applied it a bit too far towards the middle for that. I'm just gonna go in with the shade Marsh because I already have it on my brush. Oh, I just love this color together with that berry shade. That is very cool. Now for the outer corner with the brown, I'm going to use this yellow to blend it out, and then I'm going to use this pink to blend out the berry shade. So I'm just going to start out with the yellow, and now I'm using my Cosmic Brushes tube brush, and I'm just going to tie it together right here where it meets the more green tone. They're just applying so nicely when I do the transition shades. They're very good. And now taking that pink shade and just applying that towards the inner corner here. And then I'll just go back in with the deepest shades. Now my dog is awake, but I'll go back in with the deepest shades to make sure that they're not looking like this, because they're looking a little bit patchy. I think it's the Wet n Wild primer, because I used that another day too, and I felt like it wasn't the best because you can see that it does this thing, but the shadows themselves are great. Now for even more transition shades, I'm going to use the shade Reeds right here from the Undergrowth palette, and I'll use the shade Chick from the Neutrals palette. And for those shades, I'm going to use this big brush. It's the Cosmic Brushes #1. I'm not using way too much of that shade, just a little bit. For the lower lash line, I'll use the shade Tease, which is the kind of green yellow beige shade. So I'll just apply that to the very inner, or like into the lash line, and then I'll blend it out a little bit. I don't want too much on the lower lash line, but I do need to balance it out a little bit, considering I have a lot going on the lid. So I'm just going to take that shade and also brush it slightly upwards here at the edge to make sure I get a nice blend there. And then I think I'm ready for the shimmers. Now I decided I'm going to use the shade Glamorous right here for the inner lid, and then I'm going to use the shade Undergrowth, which is right here. And are those going to blend together? Probably not, but they look like they're the same kind of sparkly formula, so I'll just have to tap 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 to make sure that they do look like they blend together. So I'm gonna apply some glitter glue this time just to make sure that I get the opacity and sparkliness and shiftiness that I want. I think I'm going to, in addition to those shades, I'll also use the lightest shade in the Neutrals palette. I kind of have to be a little bit quick now because the Glam glue is a glitter glue that dries quite fast. So I'm just applying the shade Undergrowth there, and then I'm going to take a little bit of Glamorous. Oh, that was a little bit more waxy. Oh, that is very pretty though. And then I'm going to take the shade, what is it called? It's called Satin. Ooh, that's also a very different kind of formula. I'm using a way too big finger for the inner corner here. Maybe I'll try to use a brush. I'm just taking a brush to see if I can even that out, or maybe use a different finger. It's definitely giving a gradient though, which I really wanted. But I did apply it a bit too high up right there. But other than that, I think it's looking really nice. So I'll just apply a little bit more of the shade Glamorous. I don't have anything more on my finger than I had earlier, but I'm just kind of working them together on the lid here. So I'll just do that until I am happy with how it's looking. And also towards the inner corner here, of course. I'll just see if I can like scrape off with the brush just the tiny bits that I feel like went far too far up here. But it looks like it's not gonna happen. Well, at least it looks a little bit more blown out now instead of very opaque there, but I would have preferred it to be a little bit lower. But I think this is looking really cool. Now here is the final look. I feel like this look is a little bit more romantic because of the mix of green and pink. And I think it's very pretty. I think the shimmers are just so opaque and shifty, or not shifty, but I mean the Undergrowth shade is, but I was meaning sparkly. So they're just looking very, very beautiful. So I'm just very happy with how this look turned out as well. And I think my favorite looks is this one and the previous one that I did with the Neutrals palette. I just think they have a little bit more complexity to them, and I just love the color combinations. And you can see that the color combinations are quite similar to the shades in my Serpent palette, which is probably why I like these looks the most. And that was all of the different looks that I created, and my impression now, and I feel like I've used a lot of shades from both palettes, although I know I did like go into a lot of the same shades too. I feel like the shades are performing really nicely. The shimmers are mostly very sparkly and shifty. I feel like some of them are maybe not, and there are a few different kind of formulas here. For example, it was the shade right here, Glamorous, felt a little bit more waxy, and I feel like this one that I used and this one that I used are a little bit more thin while still being opaque, sparkly and shifty. But I did have a little bit of creasing throughout the day with these two, but I did also not use any glitter glue, so I think that could solve the problem quite easily. And also the creasing wasn't very bad, so it wasn't very visible that I had creasing unless I like did this with my eyes. I have to say the mattes performed very nicely. They are very opaque and they blend very easily, and I feel like the transition shades just help them so much. It's like they're quite opaque, and I feel like that just kind of erases any kind of patchiness you might have had, or if you didn't blend properly the deeper shades, then you have those lighter shades to blend the darker shades with. There are a few changes I would have probably done with these color stories, and I would have loved to have a more cool toned pink that would have made this more lilac when you used it to blending. And I feel like also this one doesn't have that many light shimmers, but that's just my preferences, and I think both of these palettes are very nicely done and they're very beautiful, and you can do so many looks with them. If I had to choose one of the palettes, I'd actually go for the Neutrals palette, just because first of all I do have a lot of color stories like this, for example the Beauty Bay, Wilderness, and the, I don't remember what it's called, but it's like the bigger palette that has some of the shades that Wilderness has. It's really beautiful and it looks a little bit like this, and I just feel like the shimmers in this palette are a little bit more special, or at least it has a little bit more shimmers that I feel like are more special. But I do really appreciate in particular, I mean I like a lot of these shades too, because I like this one, this one is so intense, the one that I used for my, I think it was a second look, and the Wilderness shade, And I do also kind of like this bronzy shade and the deep brown, but I don't feel like I get a lot of use out of these kind of deep browns, but I do still appreciate them. But I feel like this other palette, the Neutrals palette, just has a little bit more shifty shades, but I don't know if that's correct because the Undergrowth palette has like at least 4 shifty shades, and this one doesn't necessarily have anything more than that. I don't know, I just prefer this one, I think. But I really do like Undergrowth, and I'm happy to have it. But I do think this has been a long video, so I think I'm gonna end it right here. I will just mention that I used the Propa Beauty Finesse lipstick for this look. It's a very neutral shade, and the rest of the details I'll leave down below. For my eye looks, it was basically the same. I did switch the primer a few times, I think, because I used both the Wet n Wild and the Smashbox primer, and the Smashbox primer worked a lot better in my opinion, but the Wet n Wild was also okay. It's just I had to go back in with the shades a little bit more. But I'm gonna end it right here. Please leave me a comment down below which look was your favorite, and also your thoughts on these palettes. Which one would you have picked up if you could only pick up one, and have you tried them yourself? I'm very excited to hear your opinions about the palette and of course the brand. So yeah, that was the video. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye!